All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are decoding the ultimate forgotten middle child of personal finance, Generation X. We're going to dig into how their seemingly strange, kind of contradictory money habits aren't actually random quirks at all. No, they are actually brilliant survival tactics, totally forged in the fires of economic instability.
So let's just look at the media landscape right now, because it's a fascinating contrast. We are constantly obsessing over boomers and their massive real estate wealth, right? And we relentlessly analyze millennials for, avocado toast, while Gen Z gets endless think pieces about their side hustles. But right there in the middle is this massive blank space. Gen X has just been sitting quietly, managing their money in the most unusual, paradoxical ways, and honestly, almost nobody is talking about the distinct psychology behind it.
Well, we're going to fix that today. We are conducting a psychological autopsy of the modern financial survivor. Here's our agenda. 1. The forgotten generation. 2. The broken economic promise. 3. The defensive pessimist. 4. Paradoxical loyalty and spending. 5. Strategic debt and self-reliance. And 6. The financial survivalist. Okay, Section 1. The forgotten generation. Let's start with a really quick profile of this group born between 1965 and 1980. Because when you look closely at how they handle their finances, you immediately notice some highly contradictory behaviors. We all know someone exactly like this, right? It's that uncle who has quietly amassed like 50 grand in savings but absolutely refuses to replace his beat-up 15-year-old Toyota. Or maybe it's that friend who won't even bat an eye dropping $500 on Prime concert tickets, but then spends 20 minutes obsessively clipping coupons at the grocery store to save like $3. It's a total mystery. They might hold substantial wealth, but they behave as if they are constantly just one single paycheck away from total disaster. Moving to Section 2, the broken economic promise. To truly understand why they act this way, we have to travel back in time to the specific economic events that permanently rewired their entire approach to money and trust. Picture this timeline for a second. It's 1983. You're a 10-year-old Gen Xer at the bank with your dad. He deposits a steady paycheck from a company he's been at for 15 years. He's got a pension, his savings actually earn interest, and that classic formula of work hard, save money, retire comfortably is working perfectly. But then, flash forward to 1995. Corporate loyalty just vanishes. You watch your mom's company downsize, and people who worked there for decades are suddenly out on the street with absolutely zero safety net. Then comes 2008. You're 35, you played by the rules, and you watch your 401k completely crater while housing values collapse. I mean, these events taught Gen X one really resounding lesson. The system is fundamentally broken. Which brings us to Section 3, the defensive pessimist. That historical trauma we just talked about, it created their first massive financial paradox, specifically when it comes to their golden years. Data from the Transamerica Center reveals this incredible contrast. On one hand, a whopping 70% of Gen Xers say they are absolutely terrified about retirement. They literally do not believe the math is going to work out for them. But on the other hand, ironically, they hold the second highest 401k contribution rates of any generation. Think about that. They don't believe the system will save them, but they aggressively save within it anyway. So the crucial takeaway here is that they aren't just wearing tinfoil hats and being overly paranoid. They utilize a highly documented psychological strategy called defensive pessimism. You essentially assume the absolute worst is going to happen, so you prepare obsessively for it. Sure, it's exhausting, but it is exactly what keeps them alive in an economy that has burned them over and over again. They aren't pessimists, they're realists. And honestly, this defensive mindset is exactly why they practically invented the side hustle, way before millennials gave it a cute name. Federal Reserve data shows Gen X actually has higher rates of self-employment and secondary income streams than both boomers and millennials. But here's the catch. Most of them keep their 9-to-5 day jobs. They aren't running some artisan Etsy shop to chase their wildest dreams. No, they are building emergency escape tunnels while keeping the main exit wide open. They do this because they vividly remember their parents being walked out of their stable corporate jobs holding cardboard boxes. It's not about pure ambition, it's insurance. Let's dive into Section 4, paradoxical loyalty and spending. It is fascinating to see how this deep distrust builds into their contrasting behaviors as consumers and as employees. There's this Adobe study that highlights a beautiful contradiction. Gen X will gladly quit a massive Fortune 500 company via a 2-sentence email without a second of hesitation. Why? Because they know those institutions have zero loyalty to them.
Yet they are 34% more likely than millennials to fiercely stick with nostalgic brands from their youth. They'll drive entirely across town for the coffee shop where the owner actually knows their order, and they will keep buying the exact same Levi's they wore in high school. The logic is simple. Corporations portrayed them, but those nostalgic brands and local people never lied to them.
And when it comes to where their discretionary income actually goes, Eventbrite data reveals a pretty massive number, roughly $3,000 a year. That is how much they spend on concerts, travel, and live events. That's more actual, hard dollars spent on experiences than any other generation.
This brings up such a brilliant realization. They are financially paranoid, yet experientially extravagant. They save obsessively because systems can't be trusted, but they spend big on experiences because physical stuff can't be trusted either. Your house can go underwater, your car loses value, but a bank absolutely cannot repossess your memory of a 1994 Pearl Jam concert. In a highly unstable economy, they realized that untouchable memories offer a much safer return on investment than physical assets ever could.
Moving on to Section 5, Strategic Debt and Self-Reliance. This deep-seated distrust of systems naturally extends into the realm of financial experts and how this generation handles debt.
Data from Cerulli Associates shows that Gen X is the least likely generation to use traditional financial advisors. They're kind of the last generation to fully believe that you can sit down with a heavy book or a massive spreadsheet and just figure things out on your own. They remember what happened when their parents blindly trusted experts with their pensions, so today they refuse to make that mistake. They're going to educate themselves, verify every single number twice, and essentially trust no one. It might look like arrogance to an outsider, but to Gen X, extreme self-reliance is purely self-defense. But here's where it gets wild. Despite all this careful planning and intense paranoia, Experian data reveals a really surprising reality. Gen X actually carries the highest total debt load of any generation right now. I mean, they're towering over both millennials and boomers. But actually, scratch that. Don't let that massive number fool you. They are incredibly strategic about this debt. They will gladly leverage a massive $400,000 mortgage for real estate. Why? Because a mortgage is a fixed payment, it has a clear timeline, it represents predictable control over an appreciating asset. But they will fiercely avoid a $2,000 credit card balance. They saw unprecedented consumer debt swallow people whole back in the 80s and 90s, and they know credit card debt is endless chaos. Their golden rule is simple: borrow only what can be strictly mapped to a predictable completion.
Section 6, the Financial Survivalist. This brings us to our final section, highlighting their ultimate methodology for navigating our modern world of frequently broken digital promises.
Data from AARP highlights a really stark difference. 61% of Gen X maintains physical, paper files of their important documents, compared to just 34% of millennials. And listen, it's not because they're bad with technology. Let's not forget, Gen X literally built the internet. They do this because they vividly remember the early days when companies lost records, databases randomly crashed, and digital promises just evaporated into thin air. They practice this brilliant concept called redundancy by design. It's basically the practice of maintaining multiple, overlapping backup systems. Yes, they use the slick digital banking app on their phone, but they also keep the paper statements filed away in a fireproof safe in the basement. They trust technology to work most of the time, but they trust paper to work all of the time. Ultimately, what you should take away from this explainer is that Gen Xers are highly adapted financial survivalists. When you look closely at the data, their money habits aren't random, confusing quirks. They are precise, completely logical adaptations to a series of historical economic betrayals. They prepare for absolutely everything, purely because experiences taught them they have to. They learned the golden rules of the American dream back in 1983. But way more importantly, they realized those rules could be completely rewritten by institutions without a moment's warning. So today, they show up, they save, they work hard, and they play the game. But they navigate the system with their eyes wide open, never forgetting for a single second that the game is rigged. So, I want to turn this over to you now. What weird money habits have you noticed in yourself, or maybe in the Gen Xers around you? And how do you think historical events shaped those specific behaviors? Let us know your thoughts on this generation's financial survival tactics in the comments below. Keep questioning the psychology behind why we do what we do, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.